Have you ever noticed how some people in their 80s seem to have more energy and vitality than others in their 60s? It's almost as if they've discovered some secret fountain of youth that's been hiding in plain sight all along. Well, my friends, today we're going to talk about something that affects each and every one of us: how we age, and more importantly, how we can age with grace, dignity, and yes, even a bit of mischief. I'm so glad you've joined me today. You know, when I think about aging, I'm reminded of something my grandmother used to say. She would look at me with that twinkle in her eye and tell me, aging is like a fine wine. Given the right conditions, we only get better with time. And wasn't she right? But here's the thing, those right conditions don't just happen by accident. They're created through the choices we make every single day. Throughout my years working with adults in their golden years, I've noticed patterns. Little mistakes that can make the difference between thriving and merely surviving as we age. Today, I want to share these insights with you, not as a list of do's and don'ts, but as a conversation between friends who want the best for each other. Let's start with something that might surprise you. One of the biggest mistakes I see people making after 60 is believing that it's too late to make meaningful changes. I remember meeting Harold, a 72-year-old who came to one of my wellness workshops. He sat in the back row, arms crossed, clearly there only because his daughter had insisted. When I asked about his goals, he shrugged and said, "At my age, what's the point of starting something new?" 6 months later, that same Harold was leading a walking group in his community and had reduced his blood pressure medication by half. What changed? He simply allowed himself to believe that his story wasn't finished yet, that in fact an exciting new chapter was just beginning. You see, our minds are powerful things. When we tell ourselves that decline is inevitable, or that we're too old to learn new skills, exercise regularly, or make new friends, we're essentially writing our own prescription for accelerated aging. Science has shown us that our beliefs about aging can actually affect how we age physically. Studies from Yale University found that people with positive perceptions of aging lived, on average, 7.5 years longer than those with negative perceptions. That's more than the benefit you'd get from not smoking or maintaining a healthy weight. So the first costly mistake to avoid is limiting yourself with outdated beliefs about what's possible as you age. Instead, I encourage you to wake up each morning and ask yourself, what new possibility might I explore today? It could be as simple as trying a new recipe or as bold as signing up for that painting class you've always been curious about. The second mistake I've observed is a bit more subtle but equally impactful. It's what I call nutrition neglect. Now, I'm not talking about strict diets or counting every calorie. I'm talking about understanding that after 60, our bodies have different nutritional needs, and meeting those needs becomes even more critical for maintaining energy, cognitive function, and overall health. I recall a conversation with Margaret, a vibrant 68-year-old who couldn't figure out why she was feeling constantly tired despite getting enough sleep. During our chat, I discovered that her typical day included coffee for breakfast, a small sandwich for lunch, and a light dinner, rarely including protein sources like eggs, fish, or beans. What Margaret didn't realize was that as we age, our bodies actually need more protein, not less, to maintain muscle mass and strength. Within weeks of adjusting her meals to include protein with every meal, things like Greek yogurt with breakfast, tuna with lunch, and chicken or lentils with dinner, Margaret noticed a remarkable difference in her energy levels. She called me one day, excitement in her voice, to tell me she'd spent the entire afternoon gardening and still had energy to play with her grandchildren when they visited. Protein isn't the only nutritional concern as we age. Vitamin B12, calcium, vitamin D, and omega-3 fatty acids all become more crucial. Yet many of us don't adjust our eating habits to account for these changing needs. Instead of seeing food as merely calories or treats, I invite you to view each meal as an opportunity to nourish your body with what it truly needs to thrive. The third costly mistake involves something we all do every night, yet few of us give it the attention it deserves: sleep. Oh, I know what some of you might be thinking. I've always been a light sleeper, or it's normal to sleep less as you get older. But here's what research has shown us. Poor sleep isn't just an inconvenience, it's directly linked to increased risk of heart disease, weakened immune function, cognitive decline, and even conditions like Alzheimer's. Frank, an active 75-year-old, dismissed his sleep problems as just part of getting older for years. He would wake up 3 or 4 times each night and often start his day at 4 a.m. simply because he couldn't fall back asleep. During the day, he noticed his patience wearing thin, his memory becoming less reliable, and his enjoyment of activities diminishing. It wasn't until his doctor connected these symptoms to his poor sleep that Frank decided to take action. By establishing a consistent bedtime routine, keeping his bedroom cool and dark, limiting screen time in the evening, and addressing his sleep apnea with his doctor, Frank transformed not just his nights but his days as well. "I feel like I've gained years back," he told me. "I never realized how much my poor sleep was aging me until I started sleeping well again." What's fascinating about sleep is that it's when our bodies perform critical maintenance, clearing toxins from the brain, repairing cells, and consolidating memories. When we shortchange our sleep, we're essentially skipping the body's nightly restoration program. Yet many of us prioritize almost everything else above getting proper rest. As we wrap up this first part of our conversation, I want you to consider these 3 areas in your own life. Are you limiting yourself with outdated beliefs about what's possible at your age? Are you nourishing your body with the specific nutrients it needs now? And are you giving your body the restorative sleep it requires to repair and rejuvenate? In our next discussion, we'll explore more potential pitfalls that can accelerate aging, along with practical strategies to avoid them. But for now, I encourage you to be gentle with yourself as you reflect on these first few points. Remember, awareness is always the first step toward positive change. You've already shown wisdom by seeking out this information, and that's something to be celebrated. The journey of aging well isn't about perfection. It's about making small, consistent choices that add up to significant differences in how we feel and function. And isn't that what we all want? Not just more years in our lives, but more life in our years. So until next time, remember, you're not just getting older, you're getting better, and the best is yet to come. Let's talk about something that many of us tend to overlook as we get older: the power of movement and physical activity. The fourth costly mistake I see many people make after 60 is what I call the gradual surrender. It happens so slowly you barely notice it, giving up activities because they seem too strenuous or not appropriate for your age. I remember meeting Elaine, a 67-year-old former dance teacher who had slowly stopped dancing over the years. "My knees aren't what they used to be," she told me with a shrug when I asked why she'd given up something she loved. But here's the fascinating part of Elaine's story. When her doctor suggested she try gentle dance therapy for her arthritis, she reluctantly agreed. 3 months later, not only was her mobility improved, but her pain had decreased significantly. "I didn't realize that stopping movement was actually making my condition worse," she confessed. "What science tells us is counterintuitive but powerful. The less we move as we age, the faster we lose our ability to move. It creates a downward spiral that can lead to frailty and dependence. But the opposite is also true. Appropriate, consistent movement creates an upward spiral of increased strength, balance, and mobility." The key word here is appropriate. I'm not suggesting you sign up for a marathon tomorrow, though if that's your goal, more power to you. What I am suggesting is finding ways to incorporate movement that challenges you gently while respecting your body's current capabilities. This might be water aerobics that takes pressure off your joints, Tai Chi that improves balance and prevents falls, or simply a daily walk with gradually increasing distance. What's remarkable is how quickly our bodies respond to movement, even after years of inactivity. Research shows that people in their 90s can still build muscle strength through resistance training. Your body is listening and responding to the demands you place on it at every age. The question is, what message are you sending it through your daily activities? Now let's move to our fifth costly mistake, one that affects not just our physical health, but our emotional and cognitive well-being as well: social isolation. As we age, our social circles naturally change. Retirement removes workplace connections, friends and family might move away, and loved ones pass on. If we're not intentional about maintaining and creating new social connections, we can find ourselves increasingly isolated. Bernard, at 78, found himself living alone after his wife of 50 years passed away. His 2 children lived across the country, and gradually he stopped accepting invitations, preferring to stay home with his television for company. "It's just easier this way," he explained when I met him through a community outreach program. What Bernard didn't realize was that his isolation wasn't just making him lonely, it was actually affecting his health. Research from Brigham Young University showed that social isolation creates health risks comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It increases inflammation in the body, elevates stress hormones, and is associated with higher rates of dementia, heart disease, and even earlier death. In fact, maintaining strong social connections may be as important for our longevity as quitting smoking or addressing obesity. The good news is that it's never too late to rebuild or create new social connections. After some gentle encouragement, Bernard joined a veterans coffee group that met weekly at a local cafe. Initially reluctant, he soon found himself looking forward to these gatherings. "I didn't realize how much I needed to talk to people who understand what I've been through," he told me. This simple weekly connection became his gateway to other activities, volunteering at the library, joining a gardening club, and eventually becoming a mentor to younger veterans. What Bernard discovered was that meaningful social connections don't just happen, especially as we age. They require intention and sometimes courage. It might mean saying yes to that invitation even when it's easier to stay home, joining a class or group aligned with your interests, or even exploring technology that helps you stay connected with family and friends who live far away. The 6th costly mistake ties directly to how we handle the inevitable challenges that come with aging, what I call stress neglect. Many people assume that retirement automatically means a stress-free life, but the reality is that aging brings its own unique stressors: health concerns, financial considerations, loss of loved ones, and changes in identity and purpose. How we manage these stressors can dramatically impact how we age. Take Dorothy, a retired school principal who prided herself on always being strong and handling everything on her own. When her husband developed Parkinson's disease, she took on the role of caregiver without asking for help or acknowledging the emotional toll it was taking. "I should be able to handle this," she told herself. Over time, her own health began to suffer. Her blood pressure increased, she developed digestive problems, and she found herself snapping at her husband despite her best intentions. What Dorothy was experiencing wasn't weakness, it was the very real physical impact of chronic stress. When stress hormones like cortisol remain elevated for long periods, they can damage nearly every system in our body. They weaken our immune system, contribute to cognitive decline, increase inflammation, and even accelerate the aging process at the cellular level. The turning point for Dorothy came when her doctor bluntly told her, "If you don't address your stress, you won't be able to care for your husband because you'll be a patient yourself." This wake-up call led her to join a caregiver support group and accept help from family members and community services. She also began practicing simple stress management techniques like deep breathing and a daily 10-minute meditation practice. "I always thought stress management was indulgent," Dorothy admitted to me later. "Now I realize it's as essential as taking my blood pressure medication." The results spoke for themselves. Her blood pressure stabilized, her digestive issues improved, and perhaps most importantly, she found herself able to be present and patient with her husband again. The lesson from Dorothy's experience is clear. Managing stress isn't a luxury or a weakness, it's a necessity for healthy aging. This doesn't mean eliminating all stress, which would be impossible, but rather developing resilience through practices that work for you, whether that's meditation, time in nature, creative expression, spiritual practices, or simply building regular periods of rest and recovery into your day. Let's talk about the 7th costly mistake, one that many of us don't connect with aging, but that has profound implications for how well we age: hydration neglect. As we get older, our sensation of thirst naturally diminishes, even as our body's need for proper hydration remains crucial.